Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me. My name is Michael, and welcome back. I apologize. It has been a whole week since I got my last video in. Unfortunately, my tripod phone holder thing that I use broke apart completely. Wasn't able to get it to hold the phone's weight any longer without teetering forward. So the videos kept looking like this, and then going like this, and then falling like this. Thankfully, uh, my kind, wonderful mother went ahead and ordered me a new one before I could get one. So we have it and are grateful and are here once again, which is good because it's been a while. I've been missing being able to get these videos in. And it's unfortunate because we stopped right at a good spot too. Well, not necessarily a good spot, but it is a great spot. This is in regards to David and Bathsheba, is where we are heading, which is where we stopped last time, to get all of these next couple of chapters congruently with one another. My 3-year-old daughter woke up with vomit and a fever this morning, so I am staying home from work, so we are not pressed for time. So we are getting all 3 of these chapters in this morning. Yeah, I do notice though that the video, I enjoy the tripod very, very much. So I'm just trying to maybe that's a little low. Yeah, I think that's gonna be about it. I feel like I remember seeing my videos with the word more in the frame, but gonna have to make do. Anyways, yes. Ooh, and a side note. Yeah, never mind. Anyways, so we are in chapter 11 and the second book of Samuel. We're going to be doing chapters 11, 12, and 13 this morning. Going to be a little lengthy of a one. We're looking at like 30 to 40 minutes here. So, good time. I always enjoy the longer videos rather than the shorter ones. I feel like it's just giving more time over to God, rather than trying to rush through it and just only being able to submit 10 minutes of your time in the morning just doesn't seem all that right to me. So I enjoy when our videos get anywhere to about 25 minutes or longer. I feel like that's about an adequate time. Obviously, we have circumstances to where I want people to be able to watch the videos, so not making them like an hour and a half long. There's just so many different dynamics about it, but I think we're in a good groove, and yeah, it just works. So anyways, enough with that blabbering. If I all of a sudden wince, it's because that might not look very big, but it is deep. It is so deep. Got a nice little nick from the razor blade. It is deep and it is sensitive. So if it's because I hit it. Just so you're aware. But yeah, sorry. Blabbering, getting distracted. Okay, so again, chapter 11 in the second book of Samuel. We're almost, I think we're about halfway done. All right, so David and Bathsheba, David's crimes within the kingdom, specifically of idolatry. So in the springs of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all Israel, and they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. It happened late one afternoon, when David arose from his couch, and he was walking on the roof of the king's house, and he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman, and one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? So David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Now she had been purifying herself from her uncleanness. Then she returned to her house, and the woman conceived, and she sent and told David, I am pregnant. So David sent word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab was going, and how the people were doing, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. And Uriah went out of the king's house, and therefore followed him a present from the king. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and he did not go down to his house. When they told David, Uriah did not go down to his house. David said to Uriah, have you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house? Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah dwell within booths, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall then I go to my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife, as you live and as your souls lives? I will not do this thing. Then David said to Uriah, remain here today also, and tomorrow I will send you back. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. And David invited him, and he ate in the presence and and he ate in his presence and drank, so that he made him drunk. And in the evening he went out to lie on his couch with the servants of his lord, but he did not go down to his house. In the morning David wrote a letter to Joab, and sent it by the hand of Uriah. In the letter he wrote, set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting, and then draw back from him, that he may be struck down and die. As Joab was besieging the city, he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew there were valiant men. And the men of the city came out and fought with Joab. And some of the servants of David among the people fell. Uriah the Hittite also died. Then Joab sent and told David all the news about the fighting, and he instructed the messenger, when you have finished telling all the news about the fighting to the king, then, if the king's anger rises, and if he says to you, why did you go so near the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall? Who killed Abimelech the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman cast an upper millstone on him from the wall, so that he died at Thebes? Why did you go so near the wall? Then you shall say, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. So the messenger went and came and told David all that Joab had sent to him to tell. The messenger said to David, the men gained an advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers shot at your servants from the wall. Some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. David said to the messenger, thus shall you say to Joab, do not let this matter displease you, for the sword devours now one and now another. Strengthen your attack against the city and overthrow it, and encourage him. When the wife of Uriah had heard that Uriah, her husband, was dead, she lamented over her husband. And when when her mourning was over, David sent and brought her to his house, and she became his wife, and bore him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. All right, pretty impactful chapter from chapter 11. A lot of bad stuff going on with David right now, all because of these little things. Seeing a sight, seeing her bathe, gave into the lust, which that lust and then created the temptation, and then he fell into the temptation and the sin, and then the sin just kept building. It's all sorts of bad. So a little bit of the footnotes here. So in chapters 11 through 20, which is where we're at here now, records David's troubles in the areas of morals, politics, and family relationships, and illustrates repeatedly the inevitable and devastating consequences of sin. After the year was expired, again, mind you, kind of reading from King James side notes, our English Standard Version already kind of does this modern translation for more relevant English readers. So just mind with me here. Or at the return of the year, or in the spring. And spring was an advantage time to wage war because of the good weather and the available provisions from the harvest. From 11:2, Oriental homes had an enclosed courtyard that was considered part of the house. Bathsheba, bathing herself by lamplight, was not immodest, for she was in her house. However, the interior of the courtyard could be seen from the roof of David's house, situated as it was on the higher elevation of Mount Zion. From verse 3, there were 3 steps to David's sin. 1, he saw, and instead of turning and going, number 2, he inquired. And then after his inquisitory, he still wasn't satisfied. So 3, he yielded to his temptation. And then from verse 4, David was carried away by his lust, which gave birth to sin, which resulted in judgment, or death, obviously. Uriah the Hittite, though a Hittite, Uriah must have worshipped Yahweh, the Lord, in case you weren't aware, since his name means Yahweh is my light. So you can understand here, reading in this context, why the Lord would be upset, because, 1, there's numerous reasons for the Lord to be upset here, okay? Like, let's just really be honest about it. But, yeah, just leave it at that. I'll just leave it at that. From verse 4, Bathsheba evidently was not an unwilling participant in the sin. Purification after intercourse was required by Mosaic law. So yeah, as you can see here, it wasn't something that David had forced herself upon him. He brought it up. She was like, okay. And no one did it. From 11:11, Uriah exemplified the epitome of dedication to his men and to his mission. Uriah's refusal to go to his wife thwarted David's schemes to make it appear that the baby was Uriah's. Even getting him drunk did not work. From verse 14, David now resorted to Uriah's murder and coldly sent a letter of instructions by the victim himself. From 11:21, Jerubbesheth and a variation of Jerubbaal of Judges 9:57. From 11:27, displeased was evil in the eyes of. So, in the eyes of the Lord, what David had done was evil. And what do we know about God? God hates evil. God hates sin. Therefore, although sin may be concealed from the public, the omniscient God sees it all. It doesn't say all in here, but I'm going to go ahead and add that little emphasis of he sees it all. Okay, so that is going to be all our side notes from chapter 11. Here we continue into chapter 12, verse 1, which is Nathan rebukes David. David's conflict in the kingdom, the death of his baby, and the restoration to power. And the Lord sent And the Lord sent Nathan to David. He came to him and said to him, "There were 2 men in a certain city, the one rich and the one poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb, which he had bought, and he had brought it up, and it grew up with him and with its children. It used to eat out of his morsel and drink from his cup and lie in his arms, and it was like a daughter to him. Now there came a traveler to the rich man, and he was unwilling to take one of his own flock or herd to prepare for the guest who had come to him. But he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. Then David's anger was greatly kindled against the man, and he said to Nathan, "As the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity." Nathan said to David, "You are the man. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you out of the hand of Saul. And I gave you your master's house and your master's wives into your arms, and gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And if this were too little, I would add it to you as much more. Why have you despised the word of the Lord, to do what is evil in his sight? You have struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and have taken his wife to be your wife, and have killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says the Lord, Behold, I will raise up evil against you out of your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor. And he shall lie with your wives in the sight of his son. For you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun." David said to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." And Nathan said to David, "The Lord also has put away your sin. You shall not die. Nevertheless, because by this deed you have utterly scorned the Lord, the child who is born to you shall die." Then Nathan went to his house. Continuing on in the middle of verse 15, as this is where it separates, David's child dies. And the Lord afflicted the child that Uriah's wife bore to David, and he became sick. David therefore sought God on behalf of the child, and David fasted and went in and lay all night on the ground. And the elders of his house stood beside him to raise him from the ground, but he would not, nor did he eat food with them. On the 7th day the child died. And the servants of David were afraid to tell him that the child was dead, for they said, "Behold, while the child was yet alive, we spoke to him, and he did not listen to us. How then can we say to him, the child is dead? He may do himself some harm." But when David saw that his servants were whispering together, David understood that the child was dead. And David said to his servants, "Is the child dead?" They said, "He is dead." Then David arose from the earth and washed and anointed himself and changed his clothes. And he went into the house of the Lord and worshipped. And he went to his own house, and when he asked, they set food before him, and he ate. Then his servants said to him, "What is this thing that you have done? You fasted and wept for the child while he was alive, but when the child died, you arose and ate food." He said, "While the child was still alive, I fasted and wept, for I said, who knows whether the Lord will be gracious to me that the child may live? But now he is dead. Why should I?" Excuse me. Continuing from verse 23. "But now he is dead. Why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? Shall I go to him? But he will not return to me." Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and went into her and lay with her, and she bore a son, and he called his name Solomon. And the Lord loved him, and sent a message by Nathan the prophet. So he called his name Jedediah, because of the Lord. Now Joab fought against Rabbah of the Ammonites and took the royal city. And Joab sent messengers to David and said, "I have fought against Rabbah. Moreover, I have taken the city of waters. Now then, gather the rest of the people together and encamp against the city and take it, lest I take the city and it be called by my name." So David gathered all the people together and went to Rabbah and fought against it and took it. And he took the crown of their king from his head. The weight of it was a talent of gold, and on it was a precious stone, and it was placed on David's head. And he brought out the spoil of the city, a very great amount. And he brought out the people who were in it, and set them to labor with saws and iron picks and iron axes, and made them toil at the brick kilns. And thus he did to all the cities of the Ammonites. Then David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. All right, so that is a conclusion of chapter 12 here. So much information and judgment and prayer and understanding and realization into this chapter. So going over some of the side notes here, 12:1. Nathan the prophet was used a parable to lead David to condemn his own actions and bring about repentance. From verse 4, spared or was unwilling. From verse 5, David himself deserved a death for idolatry. And you can refer that from Leviticus 20, verse 10, and murder from Leviticus 24, verse 17. So David, in all rights, by Mosaic law, by God's law, should have been dead, should have been killed, but God's mercy is ever abounding. From 12:6, David demanded restitution according to the Mosaic law, which you can see in Exodus 22, verse 1. The harem of the preceding king, which was Saul, was given to his successor, David. From verses 10 to 11, these predictions of judgments were fulfilled in the violent deaths of Amnon and Absalom, and in Absalom's public appropriation of David's royal concubines. From verse 13, David's confession, given fuller expression in Psalm 51, was immediate, as was God's gracious forgiveness. From verse 14, for the sake of God's holy reputation among the nations, the sin of adultery had to be judged. From verse 18, how will he then vex himself if the child is dead? Better, how then can we tell him that the child is dead, since he might do himself harm? From verse 20, apparel or clothes, because we know he ripped off his clothes or changed his clothes. From verse 23, all of the verse may lend support to the view that infants who die are taken to heaven. The emphasis here is not an existence after death, but on the inevitability of death. The child could not return to life, but David would someday join his son in death. From verse 25, Jebediah means beloved of the Lord. The name marked Solomon as successor to the throne. From verse 27, the city of waters, that part of Bravo that linked it to its water supply. From 12:30, a talent of gold is about 75 pounds. Wow. Man, could you imagine putting 75 pounds on your head? Ugh. No, thank you. You keep your crown. Let's see here from verse 31. Put them under saws. Literary, put them to the saw. Harrows, sharp iron instruments. These are two views as to the meaning of this verse. David imposed hard labor on the captives. However, this requires a change from pass through King James versions to toil at. Or 2, David had them killed in accordance with cruel Ammonite ways. All right. Yeah. All right. So we're going to go ahead and continue in with chapter 13 now. Yeah, see, we're already at 24 and a half minutes. All right. Chapter 13. Amnon and Tamar. Now Absalom, David's son, had a beautiful sister whose name was Tamar. And after a time, Amnon, David's son, loved her. And Amnon was so tormented that he made himself ill because of his sister Tamar. For she was a virgin, and it seemed impossible to Amnon to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very crafty man. And he said to him, O son of the king, why are you so haggard morning after morning? Will you not tell me? Amnon said to him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. Jonadab said to him, Lie down on your bed and pretend to be ill, and when your father comes to see you, say to him, Let my sister Tamar come and give me bread to eat, and prepare the food in my sight, that I may see it and eat it from her hand. So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. And when the king came to see him, Amnon said to the king, Please let my sister Tamar come and make a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat from her hand. Then David sent home to Tamar, saying, Go to your brother Amnon's house and prepare food for him. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, where he was lying down, and she took dough and kneaded it and made cakes in his sight and baked the cakes. And she took the pan and emptied it out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, Send out everyone from me. So everyone went out from him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, Bring the food into the chamber, that I may eat from your hand. And Tamar took the cakes she had made, and brought them into the chamber to Amnon her brother. But when she brought them near him to eat, he took hold of her and said to her, Come, lie with me, my sister. She answered him, No, my brother, do not violate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this outrageous thing. As for me, where could I carry my shame? And as for you, you would be as one of the outrageous fools in Israel. Now therefore, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you. But he would not listen to her, and being stronger than she, he violated her and lay with her. Then Amnon hated her with a great hatred, so that the hatred that which he hated her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. And Amnon said to her, Get up, go. But she said to him, No, my brother, for this wrong in sending me away is greater than the other that you did to me. But he would not listen to her. He called the young man who served him and said, Put this woman out of my presence and bolt the door after her. Now she was wearing a long robe with sleeves, for thus were the virgin daughters of the king dressed. So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. And Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the long robe that she wore. And she laid her hand on her head and went away, crying aloud as she went. And her brother Absalom said to her, Has Amnon your brother been with you? Now hold your peace, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this to heart. So Tamar lived, a desolate woman, in her brother Absalom's house. When King David heard of all these things, he was very angry. But Absalom spoke to Amnon, neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon, because he had violated his sister Tamar. All right, from verse 23, Absalom murders Amnon. After 2 full years, Absalom had sheep shearers at Baal-Hazor, which is near Ephraim. And Absalom invited all the king's sons. And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold, your servant has sheep shears. Please let the king and his servants go with your servant. But the king said to Absalom, No, my son, let us not all go, lest we were burdensome to you. He pressed him, but he would not go, but gave him his blessing. Then Absalom said, If not, please let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said to him, Why should he go with you? But Absalom pressed him until he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Then Absalom commanded his servants, Mark when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say to you, Strike Amnon, then kill him. Do not fear. Have I not commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant. So the servants of Absalom did to Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and each mounted his mule and fled. While they were on the way, news came to David. Absalom has struck down all the king's sons, and not one of them is left. Then the king arose and tore his garments and lay on the earth, and all his servants who were standing by tore their garments. But Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, said, Let not my lord suppose that they have killed all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon alone is dead. For by the command of Absalom this has been determined from the day he violated his sister Tamar. Now therefore let not my lord the king so take it to heart as to suppose that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon alone is dead. And continuing from verse 34, Absalom flees to Geshur. But Absalom fled, and the young man who kept the watch lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, many people were coming from the road behind him, by the side of the mountain. And Jonadab said to the king, Behold, the king's sons have come, as your servant said, so it has come about. And as soon as he had finished speaking, behold, the king's son came and lifted up their voice and wept, and the king also and all his servants wept very bitterly. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ahimaaz, king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son day after day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur, and was there 3 years. And the spirit of the king longed to go out to Absalom, because he was comforted about Amnon, since he was dead. Uh-oh. My baby girl's awake, so we got side notes on another time. I apologize. She is crying up there. I love you all. I hope you enjoy the reading. God bless you, and I will see you next time.